Welcome to the 401k Audit CPA Success Show, where we're 100% focused on helping companies across the United States prepare for their 401k audit. If you have 100 eligible participants in your 401k plan, then this podcast is for you.
Hello, welcome to today's show. I'm your host, Jamie Na, and I'm joined once again by Karen.
Hello, Jamie.
And Kim.
Hi there, Jamie. Glad to be back.
Yes, glad to have you back. We are very excited about today's episode. We are in December, and we're recording this right before Christmas, and we're going to release this right before Christmas. So we decided to have a festive podcast today, and we're going to do 12 days of the 401k plan. So we're going to talk through 12 things that you need to be thinking about for your 401k plan going into 2022. So Kim, let's jump right into this. I'm excited to hear it.
I'll get started here. And Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kwanzaa, whatever holiday everyone that's listening celebrates. As we're recording this, we're about a week and a half away from Christmas. So I know they're going to publish it pretty quickly. So hopefully this will be a good timing for everybody right before Christmas. We thought we'd do a takeoff on that poem, The 12 Days of Christmas. If you remember that was someone receiving a gift every day, 12 days before Christmas, and if you go through the poem, they keep repeating themselves every time. So I'm not going to do that because that would be really boring, and I don't think you'd really want to hear everything on a 401k over and over again. So we're just going to go through it once.
Podcast, right?
Yes, exactly. And we're not going to sing it either because I don't think anybody would want to listen to that. So, and some of this we have talked about before. But what we tried to do is put together 12 items that we thought are important to plan sponsors and plan participants. And I try to think of it as you were a plan sponsor, if you could get a gift for your 401k plan, and we were trying to think of 12 of these, what would be a good thing to have in the upcoming year as a gift to your plan or to you as a plan sponsor? First thing I came up with, and I think this would be first on everybody's mind, is a healthy financial marketplace. So the market going up, continuing up, interest rates stabilizing, we're not having as much inflation as we've been having recently, that not escalating and getting any worse. Obviously, higher returns make everybody happy, certainly would make your participants happier. So we're all in this to have money for retirement. So how the market does plays a huge part in that. A lot of that you say, well, yeah, that's great, but there's nothing I can do about it anyways. Well, really, there are a few things that you can do. We wanted to try to make this not only kind of festive but actually useful information. So things that you can do to kind of help with that. First off, make sure your investment selection is diversified so that the participants, of course, the majority of the plans participants are making the decisions about what investments they get into. But if you offer them a diversified lineup, depending on what the market does do, they can move their money around so they can take advantage of whatever is happening. So if bonds are going up, they can move their money into that. If the market is going up, they can move their money into equity. So do that. Consider having a periodic review with an investment advisor, somebody that's a professional that can help you decide if any of your investments are underperforming and you can replace them. And it also helps from your fiduciary responsibility standpoint to make sure that you're doing that. So good thing to put in place if you don't have that. Also use that investment professional with your participants. They get nervous having to make decisions about investments. We kind of talked about that before. So use that investment professional. And if you don't have one, now's a good time to line one up for next year because they can really help your plan and help your participants. And the last thing, and we've talked about this before, communication with your participants, offer them educational resources, material to help them understand the investments, understand their choices, understand the diversification, where in their cycle of life, where should they be with risk and investing. That would all help them. So number one, present, good market.
I think that's great, and I think that I like what you said there about offering choices and diversity of choices. I think that's key. Like you said, I think when you were first talking, I think everybody was probably hearing, okay, well that's awesome. Hopefully that does happen. But what can I do? But I do think that the more choices you give people, the better off your plan is going to be. So. Yeah,
it definitely is manageable. I mean, regardless of what the market is doing, you can still make money. So number two, and this is another one we hear from a lot of our clients, is they'd like increased plan participation. So I plan sponsor, I spend all this money on this plan, I do a lot of work, and then nobody wants to participate in it. And they get frustrated and almost mad sometimes that I'm spending all this money and nobody's using it. So number two gift would be I have more people participating in the plan, more people taking advantage of it. Again, there are things you can do to help with this communication. Again, we preach a lot about communication, but it is so important. Help your employee base understand the value of it, understand how those assets can really grow over time, because you've got all that compounding of the gains that happen, and the dividends and the interest and all that. Try to incorporate your 401k plan discussions in more formal meetings. You probably have an open enrollment for your insurance plan, so consider adding the 401k enrollment discussion into that platform, because most people will go to those open enrollment meetings for insurance. They might not be so likely to do that for a 401k plan meeting, so roll it all together. That way they're already there. They kind of have to hear it. We talk about auto enrollment sometimes. For some plans that makes sense. That means that employees, once they hit whatever your eligibility requirements are, they're going to auto enroll into the plan unless they say they don't want in. And we find plans that do that have much higher participation. Now, on the downside, there's administration involved with that. You can end up with people with a lot of very small balances if you have high turnover with your employee base. So there's pros and cons with that, but that's something you can consider. Offering an employer contribution, so a match, is an enticement. I always tell people, if there's a match or other employer money, that's free compensation to you. And so if you're not putting money into your plan, you're not getting that match, you're walking away from additional money you could be making at your employer. So definitely consider that. There's other things on the horizon. I don't want to spend a lot of time on this, but plans are now doing kind of stranger things than what we would typically see in their 401k plan. But having large amounts of student debt is a large issue out there, if you've paying attention to the news, especially for younger folks. And so different employers are finding ways to incorporate that into the 401k plan to attract and retain younger workers. So there's ways that you can let them pay off their student debt. That counts as a contribution if you can work it through your plan, and then you can match that amount, even though the contribution is actually not going in the plan, it's going to pay off the debt. But that way the employee can still accumulate some money into their 401k plan. So again, not going to go into that into detail, but if that is kind of perks your interest, I know we've talked about that on other blogs, but also I'd check it out with your service provider. Number 3, this is a real simple one, compliance calendar. We highly recommend everybody, if your provider doesn't give you a compliance calendar at the beginning of the year, you should make one up yourself. Put dates of important tasks on your actual calendar, your electronic calendar, or get a paper calendar out if you like the old paper calendars, and write down all the different tasks that you have to do for the plan during the year, who's going to do them, when are they due, when do they need to start working on them, and then literally check them off as you get them done. That's the best way to make sure that you don't miss something along the way. Simple things like not filling out a census questionnaire can then cause you problems all down the road. It's something simple, quick. If you just schedule time to do it, get in, knock it out, get it done, then you can stay on track the whole rest of the year. So quick one, but that'll help you pay huge dividends to you throughout the year.
Great.
Doing that.
That's a good start here. So we're off and running with the first 3. So
we have our 3 presents. So Karen,
I appreciate you not singing. I appreciate you not.
No, I'm not doing that.
Voice, but...
No, we're not doing that. I'm not going there. Karen, I think we're gonna turn it over to you with the 4th present.
Okay, the 4th present. If your plan needs an audit, an early start and early completion for the audit. And believe me, your auditor will thank you for this as well. There's new audit standards that are going in that are effective for the 2021 audits. So, of course, the 2021 audits take place during 2022. And these might take some extra time. So getting an early start would be very helpful for that. It also frees up time later in the year for you and eases the frustration about possibly missing the deadline and maybe having fees and penalties associated with that, with missing the deadlines. And just, if you get the audit completed early, just think of the sense of relief that you'll have, that task is out of the way and you don't have to worry about that until the next year. And as I said before, your auditor will also thank you for that, because it's so much. They will appreciate the fact that you want to get an early start, and they'll have a lot more flexibility for you as well if you want to get started early, rather than when they're trying to finish a lot of audits at the end of the deadline, when the deadline's coming up. The fifth present is a completed fee benchmark review for your plan. And this can be conducted by your investment professional or by your service providers. And but what this does is it compares fees charged to other options and evaluates if higher fees are due to additional services that are performed. If you're seeing higher fees, you might want to consider making a change. And this is an ongoing issue with the DOL. They really look into the fees, and there are more court cases occurring based on high fee charges.
So just to draw this back to something Kim said, is this something you should add to your compliance calendar that you should do every year, or is it something that's an every other year practice? How often should you be doing this?
Yeah, I would recommend with the focus that's on this, probably annually. Maybe every other year you could get away with. If you've got a pretty standard basic plan, but I would highly recommend once a year if you can. It's just getting so much attention right now. There's a case in front of the Supreme Court right now around fees, and everybody's afraid that if that, depending on how that decision goes, it'll roll out regulations for everybody that would be very onerous to people. So everybody's kind of nervous about this, and they're tending to be class action type suits. So it covers thousands of employees in these lawsuits. So, it sounds like, oh, okay, well, it's a court case, it's one person, they're upset, what's the big deal? But that's not what people are doing. They're bringing thousands of people in, and they're millions of dollars that they're going after. Now, those tend to be bigger plans, but if you start doing class action suits, then you could have a lot of smaller people grouping together, and you could end up in the same place. So it could be very expensive to you. So it's an area, it sounds like, oh, who cares about this? Well, it's fees, no big deal. But actually, it's a big deal, and it's becoming a bigger deal. So definitely something I would recommend. Highly recommend.
Great.
And Karen, number 6.
An updated evaluation of your service providers. And there's several different service providers. You might have a third-party administrator who's separate from a record keeper. You should have a record keeper. Might be an investment professional, also your payroll company. You should conduct these evaluations every few years to see if there are better options available to your participants. Yes, there might be different things that different record keepers or service providers will offer the plan. With some payroll companies, they will actually calculate the deferrals for you and submit them. And other ones you have to do the calculate, or they'll calculate it for you, but you have to do the submission yourself. There might be different fees associated with that, but it might be something that you might want to look at and say, oh, well, it's worth a little bit extra to have that done for me. You might want to look at different record keepers, or custodians might have different investment options that are offered. Going back to the diversity, maybe one has a more diverse portfolio so that you could offer to participants. That might be something that that you would want to look into. The quality of the service. Do they make a lot of mistakes? Do they miss a lot of things that you're having to make corrections all the time? And what information do they provide to the plan participants to help them make these investment decisions in retirement planning? Some of the record keepers have an investment professional or a consultant that the participants can use. I know that I've seen that with my own 401ks that I've had in the past. Sometimes they have nice little bells and whistles for the participants, where they can actually do some retirement planning on the site and look and see, hey, if I continue to put this much into the plan and have this average return, this is what I'll end up with when I retire. And then changing the providers, it's not easy, but it is something that it's part of your fiduciary duty to make sure you're providing the best option for your participants.
Yeah, and the only thing I'd say on that one is we hear people tend not to do this, and it only comes up when either they're raising the fee, and it's like, I don't want to pay that much for this, or I'm having trouble with them. Maybe they switch reps and you had a really good rep and now you've got one that's not so good and they don't know what they're doing. They make a lot of mistakes. I mean, certainly in those situations, you do want to do an evaluation and, make a change if you feel like that's warranted. But what we're really recommending here is that things might be going fine. You're happy with everything. You really like them. It's easy. You don't spend a lot of time with it. But still, you should still do an evaluation. Doesn't mean you have to make any change at all. But it is your fiduciary duty to make sure you're providing the best plan possible to your participants for what you're offering. I mean, we're not asking a very small company to offer a multi-million-dollar plan. That would, they could afford that. But for what you're offering, you need to make the best options available to your people. So as Karen mentioned, some of these plans, it might not cost you anymore, might not really change that much, but maybe their website offers a lot more planning tools to your participants. So those are things you want to check out, and things change. So maybe it was great, a couple of years ago when you looked. Now you go look and, oh, wow, there's all these other ones that offer all this stuff that my provider doesn't. Again, not saying you would have to change for that, but I think it just shows you're doing your fiduciary duty if every so often you go out and you do your due diligence and look. Make notes. We also recommend everybody on all of these reviews that we're talking about that you keep documentation, because if you ever do end up in a lawsuit, that's going to come up. If you can say, hey, I looked and I made this decision, then usually you'll be okay. So as long as you make a reasonable choice. So
yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And I think just to let you guys know, this is great, and I'm really enjoying the list, but I do kind of miss the 5 golden rings. So I wanted to throw that out for you.
Yeah, we don't have anything like that.
We don't have any
fun about
I was excited for the 5 golden rings.
Maybe we could just say something about the market hits the new high, and we can say that every couple of times. Because the thing with the 5 golden rings is in the song it stops right there.
Right.
With the 5, it gives you a pause. So. Okay.
Awesome.
Well, number
Next
7. Yeah, number 7. There are various disclosures that every plan has to disseminate to participants. And it sounds like, again, a nothing. Okay, fine. I send them or I don't send them. Who cares? And I will be honest, I don't think most participants read any of that stuff that you send them. So I totally understand that, and I sympathize with the plan sponsors. It's a big pain, and I'm not sure what value it brings. But it is a requirement. And actually, the law provides for, much like 1099s, every 1099 that you don't issue or you get wrong, there's a penalty for each individual one of those. Same thing here. So if you you've got, let's say, 100 participants and you didn't disseminate the fee disclosure to the 100 participants, there's a fee for each one of those. So the fee times 100 is what you'd get fined. So it can add up real quickly. And if somebody wants to get their employer in trouble, they can go to the DOL and say, hey, wasn't I supposed to get a copy of this? I don't remember ever getting it. And there you go. Now you're in trouble. So one of the things we always recommend is obviously disseminate them like you're supposed to, document that you did it. But there's new rules out now through some congressional acts that have been passed that allow different ways to do this. Before, it was always it was kind of old school. You had to mail it to the person or you had to print a copy and physically hand it to them. You're not required to do that anymore. You can electronically disseminate them. Again, it's kind of complicated. There's rules around it. We don't have time to go into that. But definitely, I would check into that. If that's of interest to you, talk to your service provider. And one of the easiest things, most service providers will do that service for you. They're going to charge you, of course, but you may find that it's a relatively cheap service, and that makes it a lot easier for you. And they've got all the participants right there. It's easy for them to just email them the information or send it to them when they're sending them statements. So it's a lot easier for them to do it than for the employer. So definitely check that out. I think it could save you a lot of time and a lot of headache if you miss one. Number 8. An updated plan document, and people are going, well, why would that be a present? Why do I care about that? We're actually in a time period, you can have a plan document, and that governs how your plan works. And maybe you did it a long time ago, and you don't want to make any changes. It's working fine. That's how you want it to work. You don't really want to change anything. But Congress, in their wisdom, comes in multiple times a year, actually. They do changes all the time to different things that you wouldn't even think about in regard to the 401k plan, but it impacts your plan. And the regulators also understand that they don't want to put the onus on plan sponsors and their providers to have to go in every couple of weeks and be making plan document changes. It'd be too expensive, too confusing, and it'd be a big old mess. So they allow them to wait, and every 3-4 years, then they're required to put all of those changes in to a new plan document. And you have to do it. You don't have a choice. And your providers will clue you in when it's time for you to do that. I know the Summit Plan just completed ours. We just went through that period. So that's not that big of a deal. Your provider is going to take care of that for you. But that's a good time. When you get that email from them or that call from them that, hey, it's time to do your consolidated plan document change, that's a good time to sit down and say, do I want to really change anything else? I think we've been talking about adding a match or removing a match or adding a discretionary profit share, or we want to change vesting, or whatever it might be that you're thinking about, that student loan thing that we just talked about. Let's really explore that and think about putting that in our plan. It's a good time to do it because it will be much cheaper for you to do it as part of this consolidated thing than waiting 6 months and saying, okay, I'm ready to do it now. They're going to charge you $2,000, $3,000, $5,000 to make that change, where it's going to be only a few $100s if you do it in this consolidated approach. So,
well, that's a good way to save some money there. And I think the other thing, I know a lot of times we've talked about the Great Resignation and kind of the way employees are handling things. And one of the ways that we're talking about keeping really good employees is with benefits. And then again, this is a benefit you're already providing. So if there's a way to update it and make it a little bit more creative, kind of like the student loan thing you mentioned, or looking at this plan and say, what can we do to make this plan different than other plans? That might be ways to keep employees a little bit longer than we're seeing out in the market right now. So that's a really good one.
Yeah, absolutely. And reach out to your service provider and your investment professional. They can also tell you, this is what I'm seeing. These are the trends I see. These are the new things you can consider. So it's worth a little bit of time to update it then. Number 9, this is, I don't know how, I guess it could be a present to you if you're avoiding a problem that's going to happen. We recommend this on a more regular basis than annually, that you review who has access to your plan website. Now, that's not necessarily participants, but that's employees or others who are working on behalf of your plan. So that could be folks inside your company, could be folks at that investment advisor, could be other folks, like if you have an attorney or something. We recommend that you go to your service provider, ask, give me a list of who has access and what do they have access to. Make sure that if you've had folks change jobs, which we've had a lot of that recently, we've had people leave and their access gets left out there. That's an open door just waiting for a huge fraud to occur with your plan. So definitely recommend that you look at that on a regular basis. If you haven't done it in a while, even if you're thinking, oh, nothing's changed, there's no reason to look, I would go look, because things happen, they get set up by mistake. This is a huge protection to your participants. Also, the cybersecurity is another huge hot button issue with the DOL. They're really worried. Plans contain millions of dollars, so they're huge targets for fraudsters. There's all kinds of ways that they can take advantage of access and lax procedures, lax controls. We did a whole webcast on this topic. So if this perks your interest, we're not going to run through all that here. I'd recommend going and listen to that podcast. It's a very important area. It doesn't take a lot of time, but if you miss it, it could cost you millions. So it's a big area of risk. So definitely something to check out.
Great. No, I definitely think that's key. And like you said, that definitely is a present, because that's something that you're not going to have to deal with down the road, is any kind of security failure. So I think it's something you should be doing.
Think how bad you would feel if the money is gone.
Yeah. And
now your participants, who are your valued employees, they had a retirement and they don't have it anymore because some, crook took the money. So it is a serious thing. Definitely something to think about. Mm-hmm. Hey, right. Karen, you're going to wrap it up with our last 3 presents.
Okay. The 10th one is a completed review of the internal controls for your plan. And this is very, very important, because the controls surrounding your plan can help you avoid making errors and having to make corrections, which often associated with having to make those corrections, you have to add some additional money to it, because you have to reimburse the participants for lost earnings and things like that. Really important is payroll. The payroll controls can have a big impact on the accuracy and completeness of the activity, because payroll is where the the employee deferrals. They're calculated from there, and they're submitted off of the payroll reports. And so that's a big driver. And oftentimes, if you have a match, the match is calculated from payroll oftentimes. So that is really important. You want to review the procedures in that area to make sure that your plan remains compliant. One of the biggest things that we see surrounding the controls is that they're not submitting the deferrals timely to the trust, and there's earnings that need to be deposited to make up for what the participants lost because you delayed in making those submissions. So that's something, looking at your procedures surrounding the whole process of calculating deferrals, submitting deferrals, that's really, really important. And we have an internal controls best practices document that we can share to help you in conducting this evaluation and making sure that your controls are strong for 401k plan. Do you have anything to add to that, Kim? Before I go on to the 11th day?
If people are interested in that document, and I know Jamie's going to throw out an email address, you can email us and I'd be happy to share that with you. No charge. You don't have to talk to anybody. I'll just send it to you and you can take a look at it. We also have done a couple of separate podcasts around internal controls. So again, if that perks your interest, go check out those separate podcasts.
And that email address is 401k@summitcpa.net, 401k@summitcpa.net. As Kim said, you can always reach out to us via questions or anything that you're really interested in learning about. Or if you have a host for the show or someone that wants to join the show, we'd love to have different guests on here. So lots of reasons to email us, but we're always looking forward to hearing from you. So.
Okay, well then I'll go to the 11th present, which probably is the one that most people will would want to receive, is no visit or correspondence from the 401k plan Grinches, which is the DOL and the IRS. One of the best ways to avoid that is to make sure you follow your compliance calendar. Often this time of year, we hear from a lot of people who did not have an audit, or they didn't file their 5500 with the audit report, and so they received a letter from the DOL, and then you have a certain amount of time in order to catch up. So if you follow your compliance calendar, if you follow the instructions from your service provider, that will help you avoid those visits or in those letters. Don't delay or procrastinate. And probably most importantly, if you do hear from the DOL or IRS, respond immediately. Don't just put it aside and say, nothing will happen, nothing will come of this. They will follow up, and you will hear from them again, and you may have a very, very, very large fine or penalty associated with ignoring the correspondence.
That's not a great idea. No one wants that.
No.
And the Grinch is one of my favorite Christmas characters, so I had to throw the Grinch in here. I hate to call the DOL and the IRS Grinches, but I couldn't think of any other way to fit it in here. But seriously, the DOL and the IRS, they are looking out for your participants. So I know no one wants a letter, no one wants to talk to them, they don't want to have anything to do with them, but don't ignore them. It could be an error. They could be sending you something in error, but definitely follow up with them. And don't be afraid to call them if you have a question. They will help you if you are trying to do the right thing. So,
yes,
I say Grinches in jest, but don't be afraid to reach out to them.
Well,
they can help.
I know that we have some DOL and IRS subscribers to this podcast, and now all of our clients are going to be audited extra because you called them Grinches. So
because I called them that. Oh, wonderful! Merry Christmas!
There you go.
Merry Christmas.
Okay, and then on the last day, reduce plan fees that you have to pay for the plan. What are the ways that you can reduce your plan fees other than, shopping around and trying to find another record keeper or service provider is to consider adding an auto withdrawal feature to the plan that will allow you to disperse funds to participants that are no longer employed by the company. Then that occurs if the distribution would be below a certain dollar threshold. And that will help reduce your participant-based fees because a lot of those, that's what the fees are based on. Lots of times they charge a certain amount per participant in the plan. So if you can get some of those old participants out of the plan, it'll reduce your fees for that. There are also asset The other ones are asset-based, so it would have the same effect if you get your asset level down because you've gotten rid of some of those, some of the assets associated with those old participants that are no longer employed by the company. That'll reduce some of those fees. And
it'll help you not have an audit.
That's true too. That's true too, because the audits
counter to what we want, but
Yes.
we do talk to folks that have they're needing an audit because they have a lot of employees that have terminated. They're not with them any longer, and they've left very small balances in the plan. It just doesn't make sense for that to drive you needing an audit. So
Yes.
we recommend to them a simple plan document change will allow you to move those monies to an IRA or to get in touch with the participants and make a distribution. I mean, it doesn't make sense. You've got 100 people with $25 each, and that's driving an audit. That doesn't really make a lot of sense. So
Yes.
easy thing to spend just a little bit of time on. It can save you a lot of money. So
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we did it. We are showing the world that accountants are a little bit creative and can have fun. So I appreciate you guys bringing this list to this podcast and proving the world wrong. So I thought you guys did a great job, and I know I learned a lot, and I'm sure our listeners will learn a lot as well.
Yeah, and I just want to say again, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, whatever holiday you celebrate. I hope you have a great time, get to spend time with your family, and get ready for 2022 where we get to start the audits all over again. Thanks, everybody.
All right. Thanks, everybody. All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Enjoy this podcast? Visit our website at summitcpa.net to get more tips and strategies for achieving 401k audit success. We're here to be a resource with ever-changing rules and regulations.